Like, let's count the tropes that you can find in this book. Accidental kissing. There's only one bed. Number 3. Hey, it's Krisha from Third Book Nerd. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, this is where we talk about books, reading, and the nerd life in the Philippines. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. Today, I'm gonna talk about how I finished 5 books in 2 weeks. So please stick around. So last September, I took a 2-week detox from social media and all things internet. I realized a lot of things during that break. Number 1, that life does not revolve on social media. Being online is not even real life. Another thing that I liked about it was that I got to read 5 books in 2 weeks. So here are the 5 books that I read during my break. Let's start off with the first book that I finished. It's A Long Petal of the Sea by Isabel Allende. You might have heard of this book from my previous fully booked book haul, so if you haven't seen that one, I'll put the link up here. So, A Long Petal of the Sea by Isabel Allende. It's a historical fiction novel. There's a lamok. It's a historical fiction novel that follows Tito Victor del Mao. It's set in the 1930s as civil war grips Spain. So si Victor, he is a doctor fighting against the government. So I guess the government in Spain at that time is evil, mga fascist sila. But then they're on the losing side. And Victor has to travel to Chile with the pregnant girlfriend of his brother who died in the war, si Roser. So si Victor ug si Roser, nisakay sila og barko nga gikontrata ni Pablo Neruda, who is this poet, if you know him, and they go on a journey to Chile. And from there, we follow their story as they live their lives in a foreign country. It looks short, but it's actually long. A lot of things happen. It spans across generations, mga from the 1930s all the way to the early 90s, and you really follow the life story of Victor and Roser and the family that they build in Chile and everything that happens in it. There's a lot of politics going on aside from like daily snippets of their life, and there's a lot of passionate love affairs as well sprinkled in. In some ways, the book reads like a telenovela for me, not in a way nga kana exaggerated siya or like campy siya, but like it's really kind of long. If you've read Love in the Time of Cholera, this is quite similar in its narrative. Nga kanang it spans many generations and it involves many characters, and we see POVs of characters nga dili kita, we're not really sure if they're part of the central story, and yet we see their point of views of things. So that makes for a really interesting read. There are times when I felt like the book was telling and not showing, and it was very clinical in its descriptions nga, oh kani, this happened here, this happened on this date, etc, etc. So those parts were kind of like meh lang for me, but then I guess overall it made sense for it to be included in the story because it was part of their lives. Did I love this book? I can't say that I really loved it. Mga 3.5 stars lang siya. But I really like some of its aspects though. Pablo Neruda is here, although a fictional version of Pablo Neruda. If you don't know Tito Pablo Neruda, he's my silingan here in Mactan Island. Charot. Pablo Neruda is a poet, and he's famous for writing love poems. So in my mind, I kind of romanticize Pablo Neruda. But in the book, he's depicted as this middle-aged man who's very involved in politics. So that's what I thought about Tita Isabel Allende's A Long Petal of the Sea. If I gave 3.5 stars to Tita Isabel, this next book I will give mga 5.5 million stars. Because it's so very entertaining. I love reading this one. I read this one in one sitting. It's The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. You know, titas, you might have seen this book making its rounds on the Pangbagets app TikTok. And my hipster heart actually can't help but celebrate the fact that I read this one before everyone else. Thank you so much to our friends at Penguin Random House who sent an advanced reader's copy of this book to me. The Love Hypothesis revolves around Olive, a PhD student at Stanford, who, by some twist of fate, purposely kisses Dr. Adam Carlson, the worst, baddest, evilest professor in their school, because she doesn't want her best friend Anne to think that she's not dating anyone. If you are a casual reader, you might think nga contrived kay siya nga plot. And it could be. However, if you're somebody who's been in the Raylo fandom, this will be a very entertaining read for you. The Love Hypothesis began as a fanfiction, an archive of our own. And this was originally an academia alternate universe, or AU, about Kylo Ren, or Ben Solo, and Rey. I have been eyeballs deep in this fandom since late 2019. So this book is actually more than just a funny rom-com. It's a celebration of all the fangirls who have made their fix on AO3. Fangirling aside, I loved a lot of things about it because number one, the book is just so funny. It's very self-aware, nga it's a rom-com, and it's very unapologetic. The author broke the fourth wall mga a dozen times, and it's just so entertaining to watch because romance novels are really about the execution. This book is full of tropes, like intentionally full of tropes. Like, let's count the tropes that you can find in this book. Number 1, accidental kissing. Number 2, there's only one bed, or is there only one bed? Number 3, coffee shop AUs. Number 4, grumpy and sunshine dynamic. Number 3, another thing that I like about this book is that it's set in the STEM backdrop. And I think Ali is also in the academe herself, so she really knows what she's talking about. And it's very refreshing. I mean, there are some books, or like there's some people that say, it's not romantic, you can't do that, I mean STEM is boring, blah blah blah, but this book makes it really easy to read and I really love it. Whether you like Raylo or don't like Raylo, I think you will enjoy it. So if you love rom-coms about STEM, if you love fake dating tropes, if you love a funny book, self-aware, self-deprecating, if you love tropes, this is the book for you. This is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. The next book that we have is Bone Talk by Candy Gurley. Bone Talk tells the story of Samkad. He is a boy from the Bontoc province in the Cordilleras, and he wants nothing else in his life but to become a man, meaning he wants to undergo the rite of passage called the Cut. He wants to hunt down their enemies, the Mangili, and basically he just wants to move on from being a boy into a man. Pero something happens that prevents his rite of passage. In a turn of events, we get to see nga the Americans have already invaded the lowlands, and Samkad and his village doesn't really know nga mo na din yung mahitabo sa rest of the world. So the Americans come to his village, and from there the story unfolds na dayon. I just have a lot of feelings about this book. The main feeling that I had after reading it was basically anger. The book is very well researched, it's very descriptive, and it describes the two kinds of Americans that came to the Philippines during that time. There is a character who depicts basically maybe the benevolence of the Americans, and they came in, the ones who want to educate, the ones who want to bring healthcare and innovation and technology and whatever good stuff that they bring. Okay, so nayo sa character there is a book who's like the good American, I guess. But then there are also characters here that are portrayed as bad Americans. These are the Katong soldiers. These Americans are basically the invaders. So they bring everything bad around them. They're very disrespectful. They trample upon Samkad's cultures, everything that he knows, and they don't treat the people with respect. If anything, they humiliate the people in Samkad's village and make them do very humiliating things that they wouldn't otherwise do. Pero tungod kay na-coerce sila because the Americans have these guns and all this power with them, they're forced to do things that they otherwise wouldn't even dream of doing. So those are the two types of Americans depicted in Bone Talk. And it just makes me angry because specifically kaning a time period, you know, it's the same time period as General Luna and Goyo, and I really dislike, that's a very light word that we're using, I really don't like how the Americans came to the Philippines and basically raped and pillaged and just basically committed war crimes. I love how Bontoc culture was depicted in this book. I think Candy Gurley did a really awesome job in the research because sometimes, you know, when dealing with indigenous tribes or with native people, some people may think that their traditions are barbaric, especially with the traditions of Bontoc people, because they are known to be headhunters, they make animal sacrifices. So to the outsider, it might seem like, oh my gosh, they're barbaric, they're savages. But Candy Gurley, she depicts them in a way nga makita gani ka where they're coming from, nga these traditions are actually rooted in spirituality. This is their identity. This is how they do things in their tribes, and it makes sense for them, and it will only make sense for us also. It should only make sense for us also if we would respect these cultures. So I really like Bontok by Candy Gourlay. If you can find this one, it's very hard to find. I got this one at National Bookstore many years ago. If you can get your hands on this book, then I do suggest that you grab it. The next book that we have is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. So Convenience Store Woman is a story about Keiko. Keiko does not fit in. She has been working in the same convenience store for the last 16-17 years. She doesn't think that she's normal. You know, she has been copying others to seem normal, pero in her heart, she has never felt like she fit in, except for when she's working in the convenience store. Her life makes sense when she's working in the convenience store. She does not have any normal relationships, so she finds it really hard to be part of society, basically. So that's basically what Convenience Store Woman is all about. If you've already watched my fully booked video, I've mentioned before nga, I've tried reading this one because they said nga it was funny, it made them laugh nga, it's absurd, comical, and cute. Pero what you ko naka-find og funny niya, it's not funny for me. It's a funny, haha funny for me. And I tried to read it again, and I still stand by that opinion. Nga di siya funny para nako. I don't know what others found funny in this one. If anything, I found nga Keiko may be a neurodivergent person, and I don't think that's something to be laughed at if that's what they meant about funny. Kay tilig di ko funny niya. Naluoy ko ni Keiko. I mean, she's trying really hard to fit in. Maybe some of the humor's really dark nga katong yung mga comments about how to shut babies up. That was funny. Pero in a large part of this book, I didn't find it funny in that way. I guess at its core, Convenience Store Woman is really about the ironies of life. Charot. Keiko, whom society deems is the one who does not fit in, is actually the one with a very firm sense of self. And those who judge her for not checking the societal boxes expected of her, those are the people who don't really know what they're doing in a way. Overall, Convenience Store Woman for me was just an okay read. It's not as poignant as I thought it would be, but it drives a very neat point home though. So yeah, that's Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. And if you have a better experience at this book than I did, please let me know in the comments below and let's check out about it. Of course, hindi po mawawala ang ating romance novels. Part of my reading diet is a good tropey romance novel. The first one was The Love Hypothesis, and the second one is Kiss an Angel by the queen of modern rom-com, I'd like to think, Tita Susan Elizabeth Phillips. Daisy is a pampered rich girl who gets married off to Alex, who's this serious, guapo kind of guy in an arranged marriage by her father. Alex has a very peculiar job. He performs at a circus. So Daisy has to learn how to live without her luxuries and be Alex's wife for 6 months. And there's one point in this novel that I really like, and it's the grovel scene. This book has one of the best grovel scenes that I have read. And if you visit this Reddit thread called, I think, Romance Novels, and if you search best grovel books, you will find this in every list because the grovel is just really that good. Content warnings though, this book is set in the late 90s, early 2000s, so a lot of its language is kind of dated, and if anything, I can appreciate how our language has evolved to, you know, be more inclusive. So Kiss an Angel, she's okay. She's not amazing per se, but the grovel really takes it to another level. So if you want a book, a romance book with a good grovel, you can read Kiss an Angel by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. Just be warned about the language that you might encounter in this book. So that's that. So those are the books that I read during my break. 5 books in 2 weeks is a huge achievement for me because I'm such a slow reader. And if anything, I feel really happy. My groove to reading is back because for so long it's been gone, and I wasn't really interested in reading a lot of books or, you know, reading books regularly. Like, my reading habits really thrown out of whack. So I'm really glad to have taken that break. I'm really glad to have read those books, and I'm really glad to have shared them with you through this video. So which of these books are you excited to read? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe to our channel, and maybe share this one to your friends. This has been Krisha from Third World Book Nerd, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Social media and other digital things is like this gripo, this faucet that's always on, and your brain is like underneath all that, like a sponge, just absorbing all of that, all the good, all the bad, while I filter, while I break. So sometimes you just need to turn that stupid faucet off